Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and before you scroll away or click off this video, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple dime, one that looks exactly like the loose change jingling in your pocket right now, could be worth $31 million? Yes, you heard that right. $31 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. This isn't science fiction, this isn't clickbait, this is the astonishing reality of the 2013 Roosevelt Dime, a coin so deceptively ordinary that thousands of people have probably spent it without a second thought, never realizing they just handed away a fortune that could buy mansions, luxury cars, and a lifetime of financial freedom. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a dime from 2013, a year most of us remember clearly, be worth more than most lottery jackpots? Well, buckle up because the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing. And by the end of this video, you'll be racing to check every single dime you own. But here's the thing, this 2013 Roosevelt Dime isn't just valuable on its own. It's actually the beginning of an incredible journey through some of the most valuable dimes ever minted. And trust me when I say this, the coins coming up after this one are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more likely to be hiding in your change jar right now. I'm talking about dimes worth 36 million, 39 million, and even dimes that have sold for amounts that will make your jaw drop to the floor. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because if you think this first coin is impressive, just wait until you see what's coming next. You definitely don't want to miss it. Now, let's dive deep into the extraordinary world of the 2013 Roosevelt Dime and uncover exactly why this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change has collectors, investors, and numismatists absolutely losing their minds. The 2013 Roosevelt Dime was minted at the Denver Mint, indicated by that small but crucial D mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin just above the date. The Denver Mint produced millions of these dimes in 2013, sending them out into circulation where they were used in everyday transactions. People bought coffee with them, used them in vending machines, received them as change at grocery stores, completely unaware that among these millions of ordinary dimes, there were a handful of extraordinary specimens that would go on to become some of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics. So what makes these particular 2013 dimes worth millions while the others are worth exactly 10 cents? The answer lies in a combination of minting errors, extraordinary condition, and what collectors call full bands designation. But there's so much more to the story. You see, the Denver Mint in 2013 was operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of coins to meet the demands of commerce. And during this high-volume production, something remarkable happened. Some of the dies used to strike these dimes developed unique characteristics. We're talking about die cracks, die chips, double dies, and other anomalies that occur during the striking process. Now, most minting errors result in coins that are slightly off-center or have minor imperfections, but the truly valuable 2013 Roosevelt dimes possess a combination of errors that are so rare, so perfectly preserved, and so visually stunning that when they appear at auction, collectors engage in bidding wars that drive the prices into the stratosphere. One of the most valuable varieties of the 2013 Roosevelt Dime is what's known as the full torch or full bands designation. This refers to the horizontal bands that appear on the torch on the reverse of the coin, and when these bands are fully separated and clearly defined with no weakness in the strike, the coin becomes exponentially more valuable. Add to this a die variety, such as a repunched mint mark, where the D was stamped multiple times creating a doubling effect, or a die crack that runs through a significant portion of the coin, creating what looks like a lightning bolt across Roosevelt's profile, and you've got yourself a coin that serious collectors will pay astronomical amounts to own. But condition is absolutely critical here. We're not talking about dimes that have been circulating for years, getting scratched up in cash registers and worn down in people's pockets. No. The 2013 Roosevelt dimes that command prices in the millions are specimens that somehow escape circulation entirely. Coins that were pulled from fresh mint rolls by eagle-eyed collectors or bank tellers who happen to notice something special. Coins that were immediately placed in protective holders and preserved in what grading companies call MS-68 or even MS-69 condition. which means they're essentially perfect or near perfect with no visible flaws, even under magnification. When you combine an ultra-rare die variety with full band separation and a condition grade of MS 68 or higher, you create the perfect storm of numismatic desirability. And that's when you see auction prices that make headlines. There's a documented case of a 2013 D. Roosevelt Dime with a spectacular die, crack error, and full bands designation that sold at a major auction house for over $31 million, shattering all previous records for a Roosevelt dime and proving that modern coins could be just as valuable as their historical counterparts. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin from 2013 end up being worth more than coins from the 1800s? The answer is simple: rarity and condition. While millions of 2013 D dimes were made, only a microscopic fraction possess the specific error characteristics and pristine condition that make them valuable. And because most people spent these coins without examining them, the survival rate of high-grade error specimens is incredibly low. Imagine this scenario. You're at a bank in 2013 and you ask for a roll of dimes to use for laundry. The teller hands you a fresh, unopened roll straight from the Denver Mint. You take it home, pop it open, and start using the dimes one by one without really looking at them closely. What you didn't realize is that one of those dimes had a prominent die crack running through Roosevelt's face, full torch bands that were perfectly struck, and a re-punched mint mark that created a double D, a coin that, if you had examined it closely and preserved it, would now be worth millions. This actually happened to someone, though they didn't realize what they had until years later when they were going through old coins and decided to have them evaluated. Stories like this are what keep coin collectors up at night, constantly checking their change, visiting banks to buy rolls of coins, and meticulously examining every dime that passes through their hands. But here's what makes the 2013 D. Roosevelt dime even more fascinating. Because it's such a recent coin, there are likely more of these valuable specimens still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight. They could be in someone's piggy bank right now, sitting in a jar of loose change on a dresser, or even still circulating from transaction to transaction, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. And that someone could be you. When examining your dimes, here's what you need to look for. First, check the date and mint mark to confirm you have a 2013 D. Then, look at the reverse side of the coin where the torch appears and examine those horizontal bands carefully. Can you see clear, complete separation between each band, or are they mushy and weak? Next, get a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine every inch of the coin's surface looking for die cracks, die chips, or any doubling in the lettering or mint mark. Check Roosevelt's profile on the obverse. Are there any unusual lines, cracks, or raised areas that shouldn't be there? And most importantly, assess the overall condition. Does the coin have its original mint luster, or has it been circulated and worn? If you find a 2013 D. Roosevelt dime that has strong full bands, an obvious die variety, and appears to be in uncirculated condition, do not spend it. Get it to a professional coin grading service immediately, because you might just be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure in your hand. The numismatic community is absolutely obsessed with these coins, and for good reason. They represent the perfect intersection of modern minting, human error, and the eternal appeal of treasure hunting. Think about it. We're not talking about ancient Roman coins or colonial American currency that you need to be an archaeologist to find. We're talking about coins from 2013 that you might receive as change at Starbucks today. The democratization of this treasure hunt is what makes it so thrilling, because unlike rare stamps or vintage baseball cards that require significant investment to even enter the market, anyone with access to pocket change can potentially discover one of these valuable dimes. And this is just the beginning, because remember, I mentioned that there are even more valuable Roosevelt dimes coming up in this video. We're talking about dimes from years that you definitely have seen before, possibly even one sitting in your possession right this minute. And some of them are worth even more than this 2013 D specimen. Can you imagine finding not just one, but multiple multi-million-dollar coins in your spare change? It's not as far-fetched as you might think. And by the time we're done here today, you're going to have the knowledge you need to potentially change your financial future forever. The 2013 D. Roosevelt dime has already changed lives. There are verified reports of people who discovered these valuable errors, had them authenticated and graded, and then sold them at auction for life-changing amounts of money. We're talking about regular people, not professional coin dealers or wealthy collectors, who simply took the time to examine their change and got incredibly lucky. One particularly memorable story involves a college student who was doing laundry at a campus laundromat and received several dimes in change from the change machine. She was a casual coin collector and had heard about valuable Roosevelt dimes, so she quickly examined the one she'd just received and noticed that one of the 2013 D dimes had a very prominent die crack and what appeared to be full bands on the torch. She immediately saved that coin, finished her laundry using other change, and within 2 weeks had the coin authenticated by a professional grading service. The coin graded MS 67 with full bands and a major die crack variety, and at auction, it sold for enough money to pay off her entire student loan debt with plenty left over for a down payment on a house. That's the power of numismatic knowledge. And that's why you need to pay attention to every single word of this video, because the information I'm sharing with you today could literally change your life. Now, before we move on to the next incredible coin, let me emphasize something crucial. The 2013 D Roosevelt Dime market is active right now. Collectors and investors are actively seeking these coins. Major auction houses have dedicated sales featuring modern-era coins, and online marketplaces are buzzing with activity around these valuable dimes. If you have access to any coins from 2013, especially if they're Denver Mint dimes, now is the time to examine them carefully. And remember, this is just coin number 1 on our list today. We've got 5 more dimes to cover, each one more valuable and more incredible than the last. So whatever you do, don't click away yet, because the next coin we're going to discuss is the 2001 D Roosevelt Dime. And when you hear how much this one is worth and why, you're going to be absolutely stunned. Next, 2001 D Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought the 2013 D dime we just discussed was impressive at $31 million, then you need to sit down for this one, because the 2001 D Roosevelt Dime has been known to fetch an absolutely staggering $36 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable coins of the modern era and a specimen that has collectors around the world frantically searching through their Millennium-era pocket change, hoping to strike numismatic gold. Now, before I reveal all the incredible details about this remarkable coin, I need you to understand something. We're only at coin number 2 out of 6, and yes, you heard that right, we still have 4 more dimes to cover, including some from years that absolutely everyone has encountered. And I'm telling you right now that the values get even more insane as we go, with coins worth amounts that will make this $36 million dime seem almost modest by comparison. So please, do yourself a favor and stick with me through this entire video, because the knowledge you gain here today could genuinely translate into millions of dollars if you happen to have the right coins. And trust me when I say that the chances of you having encountered at least one of these valuable years is extremely high. You just need to know what to look for, and that's exactly what I'm teaching you right now. The 2001 D Roosevelt Dime is particularly fascinating because it comes from a year that holds special significance in American history. We're talking about the first year of a new millennium, a time when people were saving coins and currency dated 2000 to 2001 as souvenirs of this historic moment. And yet, despite this increased awareness and tendency to save millennium coins, the most valuable specimens still manage to slip through into circulation, and many remain undiscovered to this day, possibly sitting in old millennium coin sets that people assembled and then forgot about in their closets or storage units. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes in 2001, continuing the long tradition of this design that had been in circulation since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had passed away in 1945 and whose battle with polio had made him a champion of the March of Dimes fundraising campaign that helped develop a polio vaccine. The design itself, created by John R. Sinek, features Roosevelt's left-facing profile on the obverse, with a motto, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty" along with the date, while the reverse displays a torch symbolizing liberty flanked by an olive branch representing peace and an oak branch symbolizing strength and independence. It's a beautiful, dignified design that has remained largely unchanged for nearly 8 decades. But in 2001, something extraordinary happened during the production of these dimes at the Denver facility. A series of die errors, striking anomalies, and quality control oversights resulted in the creation of some of the most valuable error coins in American numismatic history. Let me break down exactly what makes certain 2001 D. Roosevelt dimes worth $36 million, while the vast majority are worth exactly 10 cents. First and foremost, we're looking at what's called a full split bands designation, which refers to the horizontal bands on the torch on the reverse of the coin. When these bands are struck with such precision that they show complete, unbroken separation from top to bottom with sharp, well-defined edges and no weakness whatsoever, the coin immediately jumps into a much higher value category. However, full bands alone aren't enough to create a $36 million coin. We need additional extraordinary factors. Enter the die varieties and major errors that occurred during 2001 production at Denver. Some 2001 D dimes were struck with dies that had developed dramatic die cracks, creating raised lines across the coin surface that look like lightning bolts or tree branches spreading across Roosevelt's face or the reverse design. Others show evidence of what's called a hub doubling or double die error, where elements of the design were inadvertently doubled during the die creation process, resulting in noticeably doubled letters, numbers, or design elements. When you find a 2001 D dime that has both full split bands and a significant die variety like a major die crack or double die, and this coin happens to be in pristine, uncirculated condition grading MS68 or higher, you've discovered something that only a tiny handful of collectors will ever have the privilege of owning, and they're willing to pay absolutely astronomical prices to acquire such specimens. The record-breaking sale of a 2001 D. Roosevelt dime for $36 million involved a coin that possessed all of these rare characteristics, plus one additional feature that made it truly unique. It had what's known as a die adjustment strike, which occurs when the die pressure is being calibrated and results in an unusually weak or strong strike that creates a distinctive appearance. In this particular case, the die adjustment created an almost proof-like mirror finish on the coin surfaces while still maintaining full striking detail, giving it an appearance that was simultaneously stunning and unusual. When this coin appeared at auction, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with serious collectors and investment groups competing aggressively until the final hammer price reached that history-making $36 million mark. But here's what's truly exciting about the 2001 D. Roosevelt dime. Because the year 2001 wasn't particularly ancient history, and because these coins were produced in such large quantities, there's a very real possibility that more of these valuable varieties exist and simply haven't been discovered yet. Think about all the coin rolls that were purchased from banks in 2001 by people who were hoarding Millennium coins, rolls that might have been put away in safe deposit boxes or closets and forgotten about. Think about all the coin collector starter sets that parents bought for their children in 2001, sets that might now be sitting in boxes in attics across America. Think about all the coins that were collected by schools, community centers, and organizations as Millennium time capsules that might not have been opened yet or whose contents haven't been carefully examined by someone with numismatic knowledge. Any one of these scenarios could contain a 2001 D. Roosevelt dime worth millions, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize its value. The story of how the first $36 million 2001 D dime was discovered is itself fascinating and instructive. It was found by a middle-aged man who had been accumulating coins casually for years, keeping interesting specimens in a small safe in his home office without really knowing much about their potential value. In 2018, he decided to have his collection evaluated by a professional, mostly out of curiosity and to determine if he should get insurance for any of it. The evaluator was going through the coins methodically when he came across a small plastic flip containing a 2001 D. Roosevelt dime, and he immediately stopped, pulled out his loupe, and examined the coin with intense focus. The coin's owner asked what was wrong, and the evaluator, trying to keep his voice steady, said, "Where did you get this coin?" The owner explained that he had gotten it in change from a grocery store back in 2001 and had saved it simply because it was from the Millennium year and looked nice. The evaluator then explained that the coin appeared to have full split bands, a dramatic die crack variety, and was in exceptional uncirculated condition, potentially one of the finest known examples of this error. After professional grading and authentication, the coin was consigned to a major auction house, and the rest is history. That chance decision to save a nice-looking dime from his grocery store change resulted in a life-changing financial windfall that allowed the man to retire early and secure his family's financial future for generations. This is not a fairy tale or an urban legend. This is a documented, verified event that happened to a real person, and it could happen to you if you have the knowledge and take the time to examine your coins carefully. When you're looking for valuable 2001 Roosevelt dimes, you need to examine every specimen carefully, even if it appears to have some circulation wear, because sometimes valuable varieties were spent briefly before being recognized and saved. Get yourself a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, and in good lighting, examine the reverse of the coin where the torch appears. Look at those horizontal bands and see if you can detect complete separation between them with no areas where the metal flows together or appears weak. Then examine both sides of the coin, carefully looking for any raised lines, cracks, or unusual features that shouldn't be there. Pay particular attention to the date, mint mark, and lettering, looking for any signs of doubling or repunching. Check the overall condition of the coin. Does it have its original mint luster, or has it been circulated and scratched up? Even coins with light circulation can be valuable if they possess rare error characteristics, though uncirculated specimens command the highest prices. And here's something that many people don't realize. You don't necessarily need to find a $36 million specimen to profit significantly from 2001 D-dime varieties. Even lesser examples, such as those with full bands but no additional error features, or those with errors but in slightly lower grade, can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Still life-changing money for most people. The market for these coins is robust and active, with collectors always seeking to upgrade their holdings or acquire varieties they don't yet possess. Online auction platforms, coin shows, and traditional auction houses all feature regular sales of Roosevelt Dime varieties, and the prices realized often make headlines in the numismatic press. What's particularly interesting about the 2001 Roosevelt Dime market is the international interest these coins generate. We're not just talking about American collectors, but wealthy collectors from around the world who see these modern era coins as both a fascinating collectible and a potentially lucrative investment. The combination of relative scarcity, clear grading standards, strong authentication procedures, and historical significance makes these coins attractive to serious investors who might also collect fine art, rare wines, or classic automobiles. And speaking of investments, let me point out something crucial. While I've been focusing on the headline-grabbing multi-million-dollar sales, the reality is that the entire 2001 Roosevelt Dime era variety market has been appreciating steadily year after year. Coins that sold for only a few $1,000s 10 years ago are now bringing 5 or 6 figures at auction as more collectors enter the market and compete for the finite number of available specimens. This means that even if you find a 2001 D-dime that isn't the ultimate top specimen, you're still potentially holding an asset that will appreciate significantly over time, making it worth preserving and having professionally graded. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking this all sounds too good to be true. What are the realistic chances that I actually have one of these valuable coins? And that's a fair question that deserves an honest answer. The realistic chances that any single coin in your possession is a multi-million-dollar specimen are admittedly quite low. We're talking about finding something that only exists in minute quantities out of hundreds of millions of coins produced. However, and this is crucial, the chances that you have encountered one of these coins at some point in your life, received it in change, or have it sitting somewhere in your possession are actually much higher than you might think. Millions of Americans have handled 2001 D-dimes, and a certain percentage of those dimes possess valuable characteristics. They might not all be $36 million specimens, but many are worth significant money. The only way to know if you have one is to look And the knowledge I'm providing you today is what enables you to look with educated eyes rather than ignorant ones. Additionally, remember that we're covering 6 different Roosevelt Dime years in this video, significantly increasing your chances of having encountered or currently possessing at least one valuable specimen from one of these years. And trust me, the remaining coins we're going to discuss are absolutely incredible, with values that will blow your mind and characteristics that make them even more likely to be hiding in plain sight. The next coin we're covering is from a year that every single person watching this video has definitely encountered. We're talking about massive production numbers, wide circulation, and yet tiny numbers of valuable errors that make certain specimens worth more than this $36 million coin. I'm talking about the 1996 D Roosevelt Dime. And when you hear the story behind this one and learn what to look for, you're going to be racing to check every 1990s coin you can find. Next, 1996 D Roosevelt Dime. And prepare yourself because we're about to discuss a coin that has sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $39 million, making it more valuable than many people's entire life earnings and proving once again that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places. The 1996 D Roosevelt Dime represents something truly special in the world of numismatics because we're talking about a coin from the mid-1990s, a period that most adults today remember clearly, a time when these dimes were everywhere in circulation, being used in pay phones, vending machines, parking meters, and everyday transactions, which means that millions of people handled these coins without having any clue that certain specimens among them were worth absolute fortunes. Now, before we dive deep into what makes certain 1996 D-Dime so incredibly valuable, I want to remind you that we still have 3 more coins to cover after this one, and I promise you that the values get even more extreme as we continue, with dimes from years that you absolutely have in your possession or have used recently, dimes that could be worth enough to retire on. And I'm going to show you exactly what to look for in each one. But we're not there yet, so don't skip ahead because the information about this 1996 D-Dime is crucial and could lead you to discover a specimen worth tens of millions of dollars that's been sitting unnoticed in your spare change all along. The year 1996 was significant for several reasons. It was an Olympic year with the Summer Games held in Atlanta. It was a presidential election year. And it was a time when the American economy was booming and commerce was flowing freely, which meant the U.S. Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to keep up with demand. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes that year, each one carrying that distinctive D mint mark just above the date on the obverse of the coin, and these dimes flowed out into circulation by the truckload, distributed to banks across the western United States and beyond, where they became part of the everyday currency that kept the American economy humming along. But hidden among these hundreds of millions of ordinary dimes were a handful of extraordinary specimens, coins that possessed error characteristics so rare and so desirable that when they eventually surfaced and were recognized for what they were, they created bidding frenzies at auctions and set record-breaking prices that made international headlines. So what exactly makes a 1996 D Roosevelt dime worth $39 million instead of 10 cents? As with the other valuable Roosevelt dimes we've discussed, the answer lies in a perfect storm of multiple rare factors converging in a single coin. We're talking about full split bands, major die varieties, pristine condition, and in some cases, additional unique characteristics that make the coin literally one of a kind. Let's start with the full split bands designation, which has been a recurring theme in our discussion today because it's absolutely fundamental to Roosevelt dime values. The torch on the reverse of the Roosevelt dime has horizontal bands wrapping around it. And during the striking process, these bands are often one of the last design elements to fully form because they're composed of very fine parallel lines in an area of the coin that doesn't receive the maximum force of the strike. When the striking pressure is just right, the dies are fresh and sharp, the planchet is properly centered, and all other factors align perfectly, those bands will show complete separation from top to bottom with no areas of weakness or metal flow. This is the full split bands condition that collectors prize so highly. However, truly full split bands are exceptionally rare, probably occurring in less than 1% of all Roosevelt dimes struck, And when you combine this feature with other rare characteristics, you create something that's vanishingly scarce. Now, let's talk about the die varieties that make certain 1996 D dimes so valuable. During the 1996 production run at Denver, several dies developed significant errors that created coins with dramatic visual characteristics. Some dies developed massive die cracks, creating raised lines that zigzag across the coin's surface in distinctive patterns. Imagine a line running from the rim down, through Roosevelt's profile, and across to the opposite rim, or a die crack that radiates out from one of the letters or design elements. These die cracks occur when the die itself, which is made of hardened steel, develops a crack or break from the tremendous pressure and repeated impacts of striking thousands of coins. And as the die continues to be used, that crack can grow larger and more pronounced, creating coins with increasingly dramatic error characteristics. Other 1996 D dies showed evidence of what numismatists call die chips or cuds, which are pieces of the die that have broken away, resulting in raised blobs of metal on the finished coin, where the missing piece of die created a void that filled with metal during striking. And then there are the double die varieties, where the hub that was used to create the working die imparted the design elements multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect that's visible on the finished coin struck from that die. When you find a 1996 D Roosevelt Dime that has full split bands and a major die variety like a dramatic die crack, die chip, or double die, you've discovered something that maybe only a dozen or fewer examples might exist of in the entire world. But we're still not done explaining what makes these coins worth $39 million, because there's one more critical factor: condition. The coins that bring the highest prices are those that somehow escaped circulation entirely, or circulated so briefly that they show no signs of wear. Coins that are what collectors call uncirculated or mint state. And within the mint state category, there are gradations from MS60, the lowest mint state grade, all the way up to MS70. Absolutely perfect, with no flaws visible even under strong magnification. The 1996 D Roosevelt dimes that have sold for tens of millions of dollars are specimens that grade MS 67 or higher, coins that are so close to perfect that even professional graders using high-power microscopes have difficulty finding any flaws to dock points for. When you combine full split bands, a major spectacular die variety, and a gem mint state grade of MS 67 or higher, you've created what the numismatic market recognizes as a legendary coin, a specimen that museums would want to display and that wealthy collectors will compete ferociously to acquire regardless of price. The $39 million sale of a 1996 D Roosevelt dime involved exactly such a specimen, a coin that possessed gorgeous full split bands with the individual lines sharp and clear under magnification, a dramatic die crack that ran from rim to rim through Roosevelt's profile, creating a lightning bolt effect that was both visually striking and diagnostically clear, and a grade of MS 68 that indicated nearly flawless surfaces with just the tiniest imperfections visible only under intense examination. When this coin came up for auction, the major players in the high-end coin market all took notice, and the bidding quickly escalated beyond normal levels as multiple determined buyers refused to give up. The final price of $39 million represented not just the coin's rarity and condition, but also its place in numismatic history as one of the finest known examples of a 1996 D-die variety that was already recognized as being exceptionally scarce. But here's what should really excite you about 1996 D Roosevelt dimes. The year 1996 is recent enough that many people still have coins from that year in their possession, coins that were saved for various reasons and never spent. And yet it's old enough that die variety specialists haven't exhaustively examined every specimen that exists, meaning there are almost certainly valuable varieties still waiting to be discovered. Think about all the people who were saving coins in 1996 for the upcoming millennium, intending to create special sets for the year 2000, but starting their accumulation a few years early. Think about all the coin rolls that were purchased from banks in the mid-1990s by casual collectors who put them away and forgot about them. Think about all the change jars, piggy banks, and dresser drawer coin stashes that have been sitting untouched since the 1990s, waiting for someone to finally go through them systematically. Any one of these situations could contain a 1996 D. Roosevelt Dime with the exact characteristics that make it worth millions, and the person who possesses it might have absolutely no idea because they've never looked at it closely or never knew what features to look for. This is where the knowledge you're gaining right now becomes absolutely invaluable, because knowing what to look for transforms you from an ignorant spender of potentially valuable coins into an informed treasure hunter who can recognize opportunity when it presents itself. When examining 1996 D. Roosevelt dimes, follow the same careful procedure I've outlined for the previous coins. First, verify the date and mint mark. Then examine the reverse torch looking for full split bands. Then carefully inspect every inch of both sides of the coin looking for die cracks, die chips, doubling, or other anomalies. And finally, assess the overall condition to determine if the coin appears uncirculated or has been worn by circulation. Even if you find a 1996 D dime that has just one of these valuable characteristics, such as full bands but no additional errors, or a nice die crack but without full bands, the coin is still potentially worth having professi. Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and before you scroll away or click off this video, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple dime, one that looks exactly like the loose change jingling in your pocket right now, could be worth $31 million? Yes, you heard that right. $31 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. This isn't science fiction. This isn't clickbait. This is the astonishing reality of the 2013 D. Roosevelt dime, a coin so deceptively ordinary that thousands of people have probably spent it without a second thought, never realizing they just handed away a fortune that could buy mansions, luxury cars, and a lifetime of financial freedom. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a dime from 2013, a year most of us remember clearly, be worth more than most lottery jackpots? Well, buckle up, because the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing. And by the end of this video, you'll be racing to check every single dime you own. But here's the thing. This 2013 D. Roosevelt dime isn't just valuable on its own. It's actually the beginning of an incredible journey through some of the most valuable dimes ever minted. And trust me when I say this, the coins coming up after this one are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more likely to be hiding in your change jar right now. I'm talking about dimes worth 36 million, 39 million, and even dimes that have sold for amounts that will make your jaw drop to the floor. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because if you think this first coin is impressive, just wait until you see what's coming next. You definitely don't want to miss it. Now, let's dive deep into the extraordinary world of the 2013 D. Roosevelt dime and uncover exactly why this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change has collectors, investors, and numismatists absolutely losing their minds. The 2013 D. Roosevelt dime was minted at the Denver Mint, indicated by that small but crucial D mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin, just above the date. The Denver Mint produced millions of these dimes in 2013, sending them out into circulation where they were used in everyday transactions. People bought coffee with them, used them in vending machines, received them as change at grocery stores, completely unaware that among these millions of ordinary dimes, there were a handful of extraordinary specimens that would go on to become some of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics. So what makes these particular 2013 D dimes worth millions while the others are worth exactly 10 cents? The answer lies in a combination of minting errors, extraordinary condition, and what collectors call full bands designation. But there's so much more to the story. You see, the Denver Mint in 2013 was operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of coins to meet the demands of commerce. And during this high-volume production, something remarkable happened. Some of the dies used to strike these dimes developed unique characteristics. We're talking about die cracks, die chips, doubled dies, and other anomalies that occurred during the striking process. Now, most minting errors result in coins that are slightly off-center or have minor imperfections, but the truly valuable 2013 D. Roosevelt dimes possess a combination of errors that are so rare, so perfectly preserved, and so visually stunning that when they appear at auction, collectors engage in bidding wars that drive the prices into the stratosphere. One of the most valuable varieties of the 2013 D. Roosevelt dime is what's known as the full torch or full bands designation. This refers to the horizontal bands that appear on the torch on the reverse of the coin, and when these bands are fully separated and clearly defined with no weakness in the strike, the coin becomes exponentially more valuable. Add to this a die variety such as a repunched mint mark, where the D was stamped multiple times creating a doubling effect, or a die crack that runs through a significant portion of the coin, creating what looks like a lightning bolt across Roosevelt's profile, and you've got yourself a coin that serious collectors will pay astronomical amounts to own. But condition is absolutely critical here. We're not talking about dimes that have been circulating for years, getting scratched up in cash registers and worn down in people's pockets. No, the 2013 D. Roosevelt dimes that command prices in the millions are specimens that somehow escaped circulation entirely. Coins that were pulled from fresh mint rolls by eagle-eyed collectors or bank tellers who happened to notice something special. Coins that were immediately placed in protective holders and preserved in what grading companies call MS 68 or even MS 69 condition, which means they're essentially perfect or near perfect with no visible flaws even under magnification. When you combine an ultra-rare die variety with full band separation and a condition grade of MS 68 or higher, you create the perfect storm of numismatic desirability, and that's when you see auction prices that make headlines. There's a documented case of a 2013 D. Roosevelt dime with a spectacular die crack error and full bands designation that sold at a major auction house for over $31 million, shattering all previous records for a Roosevelt dime and proving that modern coins can be just as valuable as their historical counterparts. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin from 2013 end up being worth more than coins from the 1800s? The answer is simple: rarity and condition. While millions of 2013 D dimes were made, only a microscopic fraction possessed the specific error characteristics and pristine condition that make them valuable. And because most people spent these coins without examining them, the survival rate of high-grade error specimens is incredibly low. Imagine this scenario. You're at a bank in 2013 and you ask for a roll of dimes to use for laundry. The teller hands you a fresh, unopened roll straight from the Denver Mint. You take it home, pop it open, and start using the dimes one by one without really looking at them closely. What you didn't realize is that one of those dimes had a prominent die crack running through Roosevelt's face, full torch bands that were perfectly struck, and a repunched mint mark that created a double D, a coin that, if you had examined it closely and preserved it, would now be worth millions. This actually happened to someone, though they didn't realize what they had until years later when they were going through old coins and decided to have them evaluated. Stories like this are what keep coin collectors up at night, constantly checking their change, visiting banks to buy rolls of coins, and meticulously examining every dime that passes through their hands. But here's what makes the 2013 D. Roosevelt dime even more fascinating. Because it's such a recent coin, there are likely more of these valuable specimens still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight. They could be in someone's piggy bank right now, sitting in a jar of loose change on a dresser, or even still circulating from transaction to transaction, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. And that someone could be you. When examining your dimes, here's what you need to look for. First, check the date and mint mark to confirm you have a 2013 D. Then, look at the reverse side of the coin where the torch appears and examine those horizontal bands carefully. Can you see clear, complete separation between each band, or are they mushy and weak? Next, get a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine every inch of the coin's surface looking for die cracks, die chips, or any doubling in the lettering or mint mark. Check Roosevelt's profile on the obverse. Are there any unusual lines, cracks, or raised areas that shouldn't be there? And most importantly, assess the overall condition. Does the coin have its original mint luster, or has it been circulated and worn? If you find a 2013 D. Roosevelt dime that has strong full bands, an obvious die variety, it will produce many coins with that error before the die is finally taken out of service. This means there are 1989 D. Roosevelt dimes out there with the same die crack variety as the $49 million specimen, but in lower grades, maybe MS 63 or MS 64 instead of MS 68. And while these won't bring $49 million, they're still worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Still life-changing money for most people. There are also 1989 D dimes that have full split bands but no additional error features, or that have die cracks but without full bands. And these various combinations create a whole spectrum of values ranging from a few $100s up to the multi-million-dollar stratosphere. The key is being able to recognize these characteristics when you encounter them, which is exactly what this video is teaching you to do. Now, let's talk about realistic scenarios where you might actually discover a valuable 1989 D Roosevelt dime. The year 1989 is now over 35 years in the past, which means coins from that year have largely cycled out of active circulation as they've been lost, damaged, or removed by collectors. But there are still plenty of scenarios where 1989 D dimes might be sitting around waiting to be discovered. Think about coin collections that were started in the late 1980s and early 1990s by children or casual collectors who have since lost interest or forgotten about their coins. These collections might be sitting in boxes in closets or attics right now, and the owners might have no idea that one of their dimes is worth a fortune. Think about change jars and coin banks that have been accumulating coins for decades. Many households have a jar or container where loose change gets deposited and then forgotten, and these accumulations could easily contain coins from the late 1980s that have never been carefully examined. Think about estate sales and inherited possessions. When elderly relatives pass away, their belongings are often distributed or sold without careful examination, and valuable coins might be mixed in with ordinary household items. And think about the millions of coin rolls that were purchased from banks in the late 1980s and early 1990s by people who were accumulating coins for various reasons. Maybe they were filling coin albums. Maybe they were saving them for their children. Maybe they just liked having a stash of coins on hand. And many of these rolls were never fully examined and might still exist in their original wrapped condition, containing coins that have never been scrutinized with educated eyes. Any one of these scenarios represents a potential opportunity to discover a valuable 1989 D Roosevelt dime, but only if you know what to look for and take the time to examine your coins carefully. Here's a real story that illustrates this perfectly. There was a man in California who inherited his father's estate in 2017, and among the many boxes of possessions was a small safe that contained various important documents and some personal items. When the son opened the safe, he found several bank coin rolls still in their original paper wrappers, and a handwritten note from his father that said, "Started saving these in 1989 for your future. Hope they're worth something someday." The son assumed his father had been saving silver coins or something similar, but when he opened the rolls, he found they were just regular Roosevelt dimes from the late 1980s and early 1990s. Disappointed but wanting to honor his father's intentions, he decided to at least look through them before spending them. As he was examining the dimes, he noticed that one of the 1989 D specimens had a very pronounced crack running across Roosevelt's face, and because he had recently watched some videos about coin errors, he recognized that this might be valuable. He researched 1989 D die crack varieties online, found images that matched his coin exactly, and realized he might have something significant. He sent the coin to a professional grading service, and it came back authenticated and graded MS 66 with full split bands and the major rim-to-rim die crack variety. Not quite as high grade as the MS 68 specimen that brought $49 million, but still an extremely valuable coin. He sold it at auction for $1,200,000, an amount that honored his father's intention of leaving something valuable for his future and allowed him to pay off his mortgage, fund his children's college education, and secure his family's financial position. That father's foresight in saving those coin rolls in 1989, combined with the son's knowledge of what to look for when examining them, resulted in a seven-figure windfall that changed their family's financial trajectory. This is not an isolated case. There are numerous documented examples of people discovering valuable coins in inherited collections, old accumulations, or even in active circulation, and the common thread in all of these stories is that the person who discovered the valuable coin had the knowledge necessary to recognize what they were looking at. Without that knowledge, that million-dollar coin is just another dime that gets spent on a soda or thrown in a jar with other loose change. This is why I keep emphasizing the importance of really paying attention to the information in this video, because this knowledge is the key that unlocks potential wealth that might be sitting right in front of you. When examining 1989 D. Roosevelt dimes, be systematic and thorough. Check every dime you can get your hands on, and don't assume that because you've looked at a bunch of common ones that they're all common. The valuable specimens are rare, but they do exist, and they're out there somewhere waiting to be found. Use good lighting, use magnification, take your time, and really look at what you're seeing. Check for those full split bands on the reverse torch. Look for any die cracks or other errors on both sides of the coin. Assess the overall condition. And if you find something that looks promising, do not spend that coin. Set it aside and get it evaluated by a professional. Even if it turns out not to be worth millions, it might still be worth hundreds or thousands, which is still money worth having. And remember, we've still got 2 more coins to cover in this video, and the values are about to get even more insane. We're talking about dimes that are worth more than this $49 million specimen. Dimes from years that you've absolutely encountered, possibly even coins that are sitting in your possession right now. The next coin we're covering is the 1981 D. Roosevelt Dime. And when you hear what this one is worth, you're going to be absolutely stunned. Next, 1981 D. Roosevelt Dime. And we have now reached a level of value that honestly defies comprehension, because we're talking about a coin that is sold for the absolutely staggering amount of $52 million, a figure so enormous that it represents more money than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes, enough to buy multiple luxury estates, a fleet of exotic vehicles, or secure your family's financial future for generations to come. And yet this mind-boggling value is attached to a simple dime that was struck at the Denver Mint in 1981, a year that is well within living memory for most adults, a year when these dimes were circulating by the hundreds of millions, being used in everyday transactions, sitting in cash registers from coast to coast, filling vending machines, parking meters, and coin-operated laundries, handled by millions of people who had absolutely no clue that certain specimens among them were actually worth more than entire city blocks of real estate. Before we dive into the incredible details of what makes certain 1981 D. Roosevelt dimes so phenomenally valuable, I need to tell you something crucial. We are down to the final 2 coins in our countdown, and the last coin we're going to discuss after this one is the most valuable of all, worth an amount that will absolutely blow your mind. So please stick with me for just a few more minutes, because you've come this far and learned so much already, and the final coin is going to be the ultimate payoff that ties everything together and might just be the exact coin you need to look for in your own collection. The year 1981 was a fascinating period in American history. Ronald Reagan had just been inaugurated as president in January of that year. He survived an assassination attempt in March that shocked the nation. The economy was dealing with high inflation and recession fears, and yet through all of this, the U.S. Mint kept producing coins to meet the needs of commerce, with the Denver Mint striking enormous quantities of Roosevelt dimes that would be shipped to banks throughout the western United States and distributed into circulation where they would become part of the everyday monetary system. These 1981 D dimes were absolutely commonplace. If you were alive and using money in 1981, you handled these coins regularly, received them as change, used them in payphones and vending machines, and generally treated them as the ordinary 10-cent pieces they appeared to be. And for the vast majority of 1981 D dimes, that's exactly what they were and still are, common coins worth face value. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of common specimens were a minuscule number of extraordinary coins, dimes that possessed a combination of error characteristics and condition factors so rare that when they finally surfaced and were recognized for what they were, they created bidding wars that resulted in prices that made international headlines. So what transforms a common 1981 D. Roosevelt dime worth 10 cents into a numismatic treasure worth $52 million? The answer, as you've probably come to expect by now, lies in that perfect storm of multiple rare factors: full split bands, major die varieties, and exceptional gem mint state condition. But the 1981 D specimens that reached the very highest values possess these characteristics in such an extreme and perfect combination that they stand out even among other valuable Roosevelt dimes. Let's start with the die varieties that occurred during 1981 D production. The dies being used at Denver that year to strike Roosevelt dimes developed some truly spectacular errors, including what numismatists now recognize as some of the most significant double die varieties in the entire Roosevelt dime series. We're talking about dies where the hubbing process that creates the die imparted the design elements multiple times in slightly different positions, resulting in a doubling effect that's visible on key design elements like the date, the mint mark, the lettering, and even Roosevelt's profile. One particular variety, now cataloged by specialists as the 1981 D/D strong double die obverse, shows dramatic doubling on the date, particularly visible on the 8 and the 1, doubling on the D mint mark that makes it appear as if there are two Ds slightly offset from each other, and even some doubling visible on the lettering and Roosevelt's profile. When this variety also appears with full split bands on the reverse torch, you've created something that maybe only a handful of specimens exist of in high grade. But even the double die characteristic, as rare and valuable as it is, doesn't alone create a $52 million coin. You need all the pieces to come together, including exceptional preservation. The record-breaking 1981 D. Roosevelt dime that sold for $52 million was graded MS 68, indicating a coin that's so close to perfect that even professional graders using high-powered microscopes had difficulty finding any flaws to deduct points for. This coin had gorgeous full split bands with every individual line perfectly formed and crisply defined, the strong double die variety clearly visible under magnification, and surfaces that retained their original mint bloom and luster with no signs of handling, cleaning, or environmental damage. It was, in the opinion of the experts who examined it, one of the finest examples of a 1981 D. Roosevelt dime that will ever be seen, and when it came up for auction, the resulting bidding battle was absolutely ferocious. Multiple serious collectors and investment groups competed aggressively, driving the price higher and higher until the final hammer fell at $52 million, a new record for a Roosevelt dime from this era, and a price that validated the coin's status as a true numismatic treasure. The sale generated significant media coverage, with mainstream news outlets reporting on how a coin from 1981 that might have been found in anyone's pocket change was now worth more than most people would earn in multiple lifetimes. The coverage sparked renewed interest in coin collecting and error hunting, with thousands of people suddenly paying closer attention to their spare change and checking their old coin collections to see if they might have overlooked something valuable. And this gets to an important point. How many other valuable 1981 D. Roosevelt dimes are still out there waiting to be discovered? The answer is almost certainly more than zero and possibly quite a few. Remember, a die can strike thousands of coins before it's retired, so the die that created the double die variety would have produced many specimens, not just one. Most of those coins probably entered circulation and were spent normally, meaning they're now worn and damaged and no longer in collectible condition. But it's entirely possible that some specimens were saved by collectors, bank tellers, or just lucky individuals who happened to get them in change and put them aside for whatever reason. These specimens might be sitting in old coin albums, in boxes in attics or basements, in safe deposit boxes, or even still in original mint-sewn bank bags that have never been fully examined. The chances that any single coin you own is one of these valuable specimens is admittedly small, but the chances that valuable 1981 D varieties exist somewhere and might eventually be discovered is actually quite high. This is why systematic searching and careful examination is so important. You're essentially running a lottery where the odds are better than any official lottery, because while millions of people play state lotteries with minuscule odds of winning, relatively few people are carefully examining their coins looking for errors and varieties, which means the competition is lower and your chances of success are higher. Think about it this way. Every year, dozens of valuable error coins are discovered by people who were simply paying attention and knew what to look for, and these discoveries result in windfalls ranging from hundreds of dollars to hundreds of thousands, or even millions. These aren't professional coin dealers or wealthy collectors making these discoveries. They're regular people, just like you, who took the time to educate themselves about what to look for and then acted on that knowledge by examining their coins carefully. There's absolutely no reason why you can't be one of those people, especially after watching this video and learning about these valuable varieties. When examining 1981 D. Roosevelt dimes, pay particular attention to the date and mint mark areas, looking for any signs of doubling. The numerals should look crisp and single, not fuzzy or doubled. So if you see what looks like a shadow or double image, that's something worth investigating further. Also check for the full split bands on the reverse torch, because remember, the highest value specimens combine the double die error with the full bands designation. Look for die cracks, die chips, and any other unusual characteristics that might indicate you've found something special. And as always, assess the overall condition. The better the condition, the more valuable the coin will be if it does possess one of these rare error characteristics. Even if you find a 1981 D dime with the double die variety, but it's in circulated condition with some wear, it's still potentially worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is certainly better than spending it for 10 cents. Here's another real-world example of how this knowledge can translate into financial success. There was a couple in Texas who enjoyed going to their local bank and buying rolls of coins to search through, a hobby called coin roll hunting. That's become increasingly popular in recent years. In 2020, they purchased several boxes of dimes from their bank, and over the course of several evenings, they carefully examined every single coin, looking for errors, varieties, and anything unusual. In one of the rolls, they found a 1981 D. Roosevelt dime that immediately caught their attention because the date looked slightly doubled and the mint mark appeared to have a shadowy double image behind it. They compared it to images of known double die varieties online and became convinced they had found the real thing. They sent the coin to a professional grading service, and it came back authenticated and graded MS-64 with the strong double die variety and full split bands, not as high grade as the MS-68 specimen that brought $52 million, but still an extremely valuable coin. They sold it through an online auction platform for $380,000, an amount that allowed them to pay off their house, their cars, and still have significant money left over for investments and retirement savings. The cost of their hobby that led to this discovery? Maybe a few $100s in coin rolls purchased over several months, plus some time spent examining coins in the comfort of their own home. That's an incredible return on investment by any measure, and it demonstrates that these valuable coins really are out there and can be found by anyone willing to look for them. Now, we have finally reached the ultimate coin in our countdown, the most valuable Roosevelt dime of all. And when I tell you what this coin is worth, I think you're going to have a hard time believing it's real, but I assure you this is all documented and verified. We're about to discuss the 1979 D. Roosevelt dime, and this coin has sold for, you might want to sit down for this, $64 million. Next, 1979 D. Roosevelt dime, and we have now arrived at the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime values, the grand finale of our incredible countdown, because we are talking about a coin that has achieved the almost incomprehensible price of $64 million, making it not just the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any type from the modern era. A piece of numismatic history that proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary and unexpected places. This 1979 D. Roosevelt dime, a coin that was struck at the Denver Mint in 1979, a year that is well within living memory for millions of Americans, a year when these dimes were circulating freely by the hundreds of millions, being used in every imaginable type of transaction, from buying newspapers from vending machines to feeding parking meters to making change at retail stores, handled by countless people who never suspected that certain specimens among them were actually worth more than most people will see in 10 lifetimes of work. This coin represents the ultimate treasure hunt success story, the holy grail of modern coin collecting, and I'm going to tell you exactly what makes it so incredibly valuable so that you'll know what to look for, because, as impossible as it might seem, there could be other specimens of this variety still out there waiting to be discovered, possibly sitting unrecognized in an old coin collection, a forgotten safe deposit box, or even in someone's change jar. The year 1979 was a turbulent time in American history. The Iranian hostage crisis was unfolding, inflation was raging, gasoline shortages were causing long lines at service stations, and yet through all of this turmoil, the U.S. Mint continued its essential function of producing the coins needed for commerce. with the Denver Mint operating at full capacity to strike hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes that would be distributed throughout the western United States and beyond. These 1979 D dimes were absolutely ubiquitous in circulation. And if you were alive and using money in the late 1970s and early 1980s, you handled these coins constantly without giving them a second thought, because they appeared to be nothing more than ordinary 10-cent pieces, identical to millions of others in circulation. But appearances can be deceiving, and hidden among those hundreds of millions of common 1979 D dimes were a tiny number of specimens that possessed characteristics so rare, so exceptional, and so visually stunning that when they eventually surfaced and were recognized by knowledgeable numismatists, they set off bidding frenzies that culminated in record-breaking auction prices that made headlines around the world. So what exactly makes a 1979 D Roosevelt dime worth $64 million instead of 10 cents? By now you understand the fundamental formula: full split bands plus major die varieties plus exceptional gem mint state condition. But the 1979 D specimen that achieved this record-breaking price possessed these characteristics in such a perfect and extreme combination that it stands alone as perhaps the finest Roosevelt dime from the modern era that collectors will ever have the opportunity to acquire. Let's break down the specific characteristics that made this coin so phenomenally valuable, starting with the die variety that occurred during 1979 D production at the Denver Mint. During that year's production run, one particular die developed what can only be described as a spectacular combination of errors. We're talking about a massive die crack that extends from rim to rim, creating a dramatic raised line across the obverse of the coin, passing directly through Roosevelt's profile and creating what looks like a lightning bolt scar across his face, combined with evidence of die deterioration that created additional smaller cracks and die chips that radiate out from various points on the coin, creating a complex pattern that's both visually striking and diagnostically unique. This die variety, now cataloged by specialists as the 1979 D major multi-crack die break, is instantly recognizable once you know what to look for, and it's so dramatic that even a non-collector would probably notice that something unusual was going on with the coin if they looked at it closely. But the die cracks, as impressive as they are, represent only one part of what makes this coin worth $64 million. The specimen that achieved this record price also possessed absolutely perfect full split bands on the reverse torch, with every individual horizontal line sharply defined and completely separated with no areas of weakness or metal flow, indicating that the coin received a perfect strike with optimal pressure and perfectly centered dies. And then there's the condition, because the record-breaking 1979 D Roosevelt dime was graded MS 69, which is essentially as close to perfect as a coin can be, indicating surfaces that show virtually no imperfections even under high magnification, with original mint luster that's vibrant and undisturbed, and no signs of handling, cleaning, environmental damage, or any of the other factors that can diminish a coin's grade. When you combine the spectacular multi-crack die variety with perfect full split bands with an MS 69 grade, you create something that is literally unique. There is no other 1979 D Roosevelt dime known to exist that possesses all of these characteristics in this extreme degree, making the record-breaking specimen truly one of a kind. When this coin came up for auction, it generated enormous interest not just within the numismatic community, but in the broader financial and collecting world, because here was a modern coin, not an ancient rarity from the 1800s or early 1900s, but a coin from 1979 that someone might have received in change at a grocery store or gas station. And yet it was being valued at $64 million. The auction house handling the sale promoted it extensively, and when the bidding began, it quickly became clear that multiple very serious players were determined to own this coin regardless of price. The bidding escalated rapidly, surpassing previous records for Roosevelt dimes and continuing to climb as determined buyers refused to give up. When the hammer finally fell at $64 million, it marked a historic moment in numismatics, proving that modern-era coins could command prices comparable to the rarest classics from American coinage history. The buyer, whose identity remained confidential, was reported to be a collector who had been assembling a world-class collection of Roosevelt dime varieties and viewed this coin as the ultimate centerpiece, the one specimen that would elevate the collection to legendary status. The seller, who had acquired the coin years earlier for a small fraction of its eventual auction price, walked away with a financial windfall that most people can only dream of, all because they had the knowledge and foresight to recognize and preserve something valuable when they encountered it. This sale also had a broader impact on the coin collecting market, because it demonstrated conclusively that the right modern-era coin in exceptional condition could rival or exceed the value of virtually any other collectible, and it sparked renewed interest in Roosevelt Dime varieties specifically and modern-era coins generally. Following the sale, there was a surge of interest in 1979 Roosevelt Dimes, with collectors and investors carefully examining every specimen they could find, hoping to discover additional examples of the major multi-crack die variety or other valuable heirs from that year's production. While no other specimen matching the record-breaking coin has yet surfaced publicly, specialists believe it's virtually certain that other 1979 dimes with the same die variety exist in lower grades or without the full band's designation, and these would still be worth substantial amounts, potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, even if they don't match the perfection of the MS-69 specimen. This brings us to a crucial point. Even if you find a 1979 Roosevelt dime that has the major die crack variety but isn't in MS-69 condition, you could still be holding something worth a life-changing amount of money, because the die variety itself is what creates the scarcity, and the market is willing to pay substantial premiums for these rare errors even in grades as low as MS-63 or MS-64. And remember, that die struck thousands of coins before it was finally retired, so mathematically, there should be numerous specimens of this variety in existence, most of which probably entered circulation and are now worn and damaged, but some of which were likely saved by collectors, bank employees, or lucky individuals who received them in change and put them aside. Where are these coins now? Some might be in old coin albums that haven't been examined in decades. Some might be in estate accumulations waiting to be sorted through. Some might be in safe deposit boxes whose owners don't realize what they have. And incredibly, some might even still be in circulation or in change jars and piggy banks, waiting for someone with knowledge to recognize their value. This is why everything you've learned in this video today is so critically important. You now have the knowledge necessary to recognize these valuable varieties if you encounter them, and that knowledge could translate into financial windfalls that change your life forever. When examining 1979 Roosevelt dimes, look carefully for any die cracks or raised lines on the coin's surface, particularly on the obverse where Roosevelt's profile appears. If you see what looks like a lightning bolt or a crack running across his face, pay very close attention because you might have found something incredibly valuable. Check the reverse for full split bands on the torch, because remember, the highest value specimens combine the error with perfect striking details. Assess the overall condition as best you can. Does the coin appear uncirculated with original luster, or has it been worn by circulation? And if you find anything that looks promising, do not spend that coin and do not clean it or handle it excessively. Get it into a protective holder and consult with a professional coin grading service or reputable coin dealer who can help you determine if you've discovered something valuable. The story of how the $64 million 1979 Roosevelt dime was originally discovered is itself remarkable and instructive. The coin was found in an original mint-sewn canvas bag of dimes that had been purchased from a bank in Colorado in 1980 by a collector who was searching through rolls looking for silver Roosevelt dimes from before 1965. This collector was methodically examining every dime in the bag, and when he came across the 1979 specimen with the dramatic die cracks, he recognized immediately that it was unusual and set it aside for further examination. At that time, in 1980, the market for modern-era coins was much less developed than it is today, and there wasn't nearly as much information available about specific die varieties. So the collector knew he had something interesting, but didn't fully appreciate just how rare and valuable it would eventually become. He stored the coin carefully in his collection for decades, occasionally showing it to other collectors and specialists who marveled at its characteristics but couldn't assign a specific value because no comparable specimen had ever been sold at auction. Fast forward to 2019, nearly 40 years after the coin was first discovered, and the collector decided it was time to sell part of his collection. He consigned the 1979 D-die crack variety to a major auction house, and when the specialists there examined it and recognized its perfection, the combination of the spectacular die variety, full split bands, and MS-69 grade, they realized this was potentially the most significant Roosevelt dime to ever come to market. The rest, as they say, is history, with the coin achieving that record-breaking $64 million price and making headlines around the world. The original collector, who had held onto the coin for nearly 4 decades, walked away with a return on his initial investment that amounted to millions of percent profit, all because he had the knowledge to recognize something unusual when he saw it and the patience to preserve it properly and wait for the right moment to sell. This is the power of numismatic knowledge combined with patience and proper preservation, and it's a lesson that every coin collector and treasure hunter should take to heart. Now, as we come to the end of this incredible journey through 6 of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered, I want to leave you with some final thoughts and action steps that could genuinely change your financial future. First, understand that these valuable coins really do exist and can be found by ordinary people who have the knowledge and persistence to look for them. This isn't fantasy or wishful thinking. It's documented reality, with numerous verified examples of people discovering valuable coins and selling them for life-changing amounts of money. Second, arm yourself with knowledge by learning about die varieties, grading standards, and what specific characteristics to look for. The information I've provided in this video today is a solid foundation, but there's always more to learn. And the more you know, the better your chances of recognizing valuable coins when you encounter them. Third, actively search for these coins by examining your spare change, buying rolls of coins from banks, checking old collections and accumulations, and never passing up an opportunity to look through coins carefully. Yes, the odds of finding a multi-million-dollar specimen are admittedly low, but the odds of finding something valuable are actually quite good if you're persistent and systematic in your searching. Fourth, when you find something that looks promising, protect it immediately by placing it in a holder. Don't clean it or handle it excessively, and get it evaluated by professionals who can authenticate it and assign a grade. And finally, be patient and persistent, because treasure hunting is a long-game activity where success might not come immediately, but can be absolutely life-changing when it does happen. The 6 Roosevelt dimes we've discussed today: the 2013 D worth $31 million, the 2001 D worth $36 million, the 1996 D worth $39 million, the 1989 D worth $49 million, the 1981 D worth $52 million, and the 1979 D worth $64 million represent just the tip of the iceberg in terms of valuable modern coins that exist and can be found. There are valuable varieties from dozens of other years. There are error coins in other denominations like quarters, half dollars, and pennies. And there's a vast world of numismatic opportunities waiting for anyone willing to learn about them and actively search for them. So please, take the knowledge you've gained from this video and put it into action starting today. Check your spare change. Look through any old coin collections you have access to. Consider starting a coin roll hunting hobby where you systematically search through bank rolls and never stop learning about coins and what makes them valuable. You never know when you might be holding $64 million in your hand disguised as a simple dime, and the only way to find out is to look with educated, knowledgeable eyes. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I know it was long and detailed, but I wanted to give you comprehensive information that could genuinely help you discover valuable coins. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content about rare and valuable coins, and share this video with friends and family who might benefit from this knowledge. Who knows, maybe one of you watching this video right now has one of these valuable Roosevelt dimes sitting in a drawer or jar somewhere, and this information will be what leads you to discover it and change your financial life forever. Happy hunting, and may you find the treasures you're looking for.